we are going to continue our statistics section with finding the mean, the standard deviation, and the 5-number summary. Most of these words probably look familiar to you, with most likely the exception of the standard deviation. That word probably is new to most of you, if not all of you. So we have the mean, or the average, which is the sum of all the values in the data set divided by the number of values in the data set. Over here on the left, we have the symbol that represents the mean. So it is X with a line on top of it. So if you see that symbol on a calculator in a statistical document, they're talking about the average. They are talking about the mean of those data values. So then we also have standard deviation. It is a measure of how much the values in the data set vary or deviate from the mean. So it's essentially saying how far away are the values from the mean, from the average. So again, we have a symbol in green here. It looks like a number 6, but it's actually a Greek symbol. It is a lowercase sigma and then X. So if you see that, we are talking about standard deviation. Then we are also going to find the 5-number summary given a set of data. So we have the minimum, which is the lowest value given a set of data, the maximum, which is the highest value, the first quartile, the median, and the third quartile. So these last 3 should look familiar to you. If you think back to Algebra 1, you probably saw those when you were making a box and whisker plot. So we are not going to make a box and whisker plot, but what these data values show us is how the data is distributed. So knowing the first quartile, median, and third quartile, we can figure out, is the data very spread out? Is it all close together? That's what those data values will tell us. So given a set of data, which we do have a set of data, so if you look at these boxed in printed numbers, that is our set of data. And we are going to use our calculator to find the mean, the standard deviation, the min, the max, quartile 1, median, and quartile 3. So we're going to find all of this using a graphing calculator. If you have one, I would get that out. If you do not have one, remember that I shared a document earlier on how you can find an app using an app store, whether it's an Android or an Apple product. You can find an app that is similar to a graphing calculator. So we're going to look at a graphing calculator right now. So now looking at this graphing calculator, you have a blank screen. We are going to look at the circle of arrows. And right next to the circle of arrows, we have the stat button. That is what we're going to enter into. So we're going to hit the stat button. And then it brings us to options, which we do want to edit. So 1 is highlighted. We're going to hit enter to edit a list. So we've done this before with exponential regressions. We have entered lists into our L1, L2, L3. We are only going to enter data values into L1 here. If you do not have an L1, that is fine. Enter the data values as you normally would into your first list, whatever that is, whether it's L1 or L2. Enter the data values in. So we're going to enter the data values in, and our first number is 4, so we're going to hit 4 and then enter. If you don't hit enter, it's not going to bring you to the next entry. So you want to hit enter every time. So you have 4, 12, 15, 9, 14, 16, 13, 6, 7, 6, 25. And if you don't hit enter after every number, you're going to end up with one big number in the first entry box. So hit enter after every single one. We have 22. And then our last number is 4. We're going to hit enter to make sure that entry is in there. So now we should have the blank box at the bottom highlighted. You can go back through, double check, make sure you have the right numbers. If you get different answers than us, it could be because we typed in the numbers wrong here. So if you end up with an incorrect answer, I would first double check and make sure that you entered the numbers in correctly. That would be the first thing I would look into. So now that we have our lists entered, we're going to hit stat again, and then we're going to hit the right arrow to go over to calc. So we've seen this before, this window, when we were doing exponential regression functions, but now what we need is actually highlighted. We want the one variable stats. So we're going to hit enter, and your L1 should be flashing or blinking. Just in case you don't have an L1, I want to go over how to change it to L2. So if you want to change the list, you're going to hit second, and then if you go down to your numbers 1, 2, and 3, above those, you have L1, L2, L3. So if you needed to change it to L2, you can click number 2, and then you changed it to L2. We have all our data in L1, so I'm going to go back to where L2 is blinking, and then I'm going to hit second, L1, or number 1 to get L1 back. And now you hit enter twice so that the calculate is highlighted and blinking. And that is what we want. So we're going to hit enter a third time, and that's going to give us everything we need. So if you look at this, you notice that we have that X with the bar over top of it. That stands for mean. So we have the mean. If we wanted to find the sum of numbers, which we do not, but if we wanted to, we could use sigma X to stand for the sum of the numbers, and that gives us 186. We do need standard deviation, and that's this symbol down here. The lowercase sigma X, 6.313. So then we're going to click the down arrow a couple times until we no longer can. And if you look at that, those bottom five are your 5-number summary, or is your 5-number summary. So you have your minimum, which is 3, quartile 1, which is 6, median, which is 12.5, quartile 3, which is 15.5, and then you have the maximum, which is 25. So we're going to go back to the notes, and we're going to record all of that. And then we're going to discuss, just in case you want to do it by hand, how you can find some of these by hand. Okay, so now we're going to enter in the values we already know, which is all those, the mean, sigma, or the mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3. So the mean is 11.625. Standard deviation is 6.313. The min is 3, the max 25, quartile 1 is 6, median is 12.5, and then quartile 3 is 15.5. Those are the values we found with our calculator. which you will be able to do as well. If we did not have a calculator available, or if we wanted to find these by hand, you could, to get the mean, add all these numbers up and then divide by the number of values there are. There are 16 here. So you would be able to add those and divide them by 16. The min, you would have to order the numbers, find the smallest one. Max, order the numbers, find the smallest one. I put these numbers in order earlier. Then we have the median, and the median is the middle of the data. So we have 16 here, 16 numbers. So we're going to have to count 8 in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But because it's an even number of values, we have to count in 8 both sides. And we have 2 numbers here. To find the median, we take the average of those numbers. So we'll add 12 plus 13 and divide them by 2 to get the median. Quartile 1 is the middle of this lower half of numbers. So if we look at the middle here, we have 6. In quartile 3, so actually it's an even number, so it's 6 plus 6 divided by 2, which is 6. And then quartile 3, if we count to the middle, we get 15 plus 16 divided by 2. So that's how we get all those numbers by hand. The most efficient way is definitely using a calculator, which you can do with your own practice problem. So you're able to try these on your own given a different set of data.